if they're not getting deals now, Ross, they're never getting deals. It's only going to go down no matter how good a year they have. In fact, the better the year they have, the less value they're going to have next year.
It's the Ross Tucker Football Podcast.
Oh, yeah, it is. But it's not just any Ross Tucker Football Podcast. It's a Monster Monday. It's presented by DraftKings always. I am, of course, Ross Tucker, former NFL offensive lineman. Most of you know that. 5 teams over the course of 7 years. Long time ago now at this point, back in the 2000s. Here we are in 2023. Ever since then, got a few small businesses. I got a bunch of different media gigs. Have several podcasts. We talked AFC North draft picks on today's College Draft Podcast. Highly, highly encourage you to listen to that draft series. At a minimum, listen to the episode where we talk about your team or your team's division on the College Draft Podcast because it's absolutely fantastic. Speaking of fantastic, I'll be joined momentarily by Andrew Brandt. Not only writes for Sports Illustrated, he's the host of the critically acclaimed Business of Sports podcast. About once every 2 or 3 months, we kind of do a simulcast thing. We'll be doing that momentarily after I make sure each and every one of you is aware of Max. Listen, we talk about the draft on the College Draft Podcast. When it comes to streaming, my first pick is Max. Best entertainment for whatever mood you're in. If it's drama, look, they got superhero movies like Batman or Shazam. You like the home renovation? Fixer Upper, Welcome Home or Hometown. I'm more the comedy guy. Curb Your Enthusiasm, Big Bang Theory. You got the family with you. They got Max Original Sesame Street, Max Original Gremlins, Secrets of the Mogwai. Don't wait to pick the best of streaming entertainment. Max, with something for every mood I'm in or my family's in anytime, it's always a win. Plans start as little as $9.99 a month. Max, the one to watch. Subscription required. Visit max.com. It's Big Show time.
The Big Show.
Absolutely love the Ross Tucker Football Podcast Business of Sports crossovers with my longtime friend now at this point, Andrew Brandt. Everybody knows former executive in the NFL with the Green Bay Packers. Before that, he was running the Barcelona Dragons, which, gosh, we could do a whole episode on that. Just living in Barcelona, doing that. Before that, he was an agent. Just had a very, very cool, diverse, unique career that he continues on now, including Business of Sports podcast. So those of you listening via the Business of Sports, check out the Ross Tucker Football Podcast. Pretty much every day, we'd love to have you getting your fill of football knowledge. And those watching or listening to the Ross Tucker Football Podcast, Business of Sports must be a part of your weekly routine. It's amazing, Andrew. I mean, here it is, June 19th. Follow him on social at Andrew Brandt. And I have like 10 topics we could get to. It really is almost like the off season is your season.
Yeah, it's always the busy time. And all those careers you just mentioned of mine, whether agent, team executive, or now a media analyst, the offseason is the busy season, even as it really slows down. We really are in the 6-week true offseason for the NFL. As you know, players are off, coaches are off, but administrators, front office execs, they're kind of never off. They're kind of off more in the season, as you and I have talked about a lot. By the way, Ross, I've been listening to your pods lately. You had a guest that the 3 of us shared a stage a couple months ago. You had Carl Nassib on. Again, the 3 of us all from an area around Philadelphia. Great guest. And it was kind of, I smiled because the 3 of us talked about that on stage. I talked to Carl, then you came on stage. Really interesting guy. And he's got a lot going on outside of football, which I always am impressed with guys that understand there's a career to be had afterwards, as you, as Carl. And that's such an important thing that I try to impress upon athletes at all levels, that sports is really not a career because of the shelf life of your body, but it's a start to a new career. So the best thing about sports is gives you aspects of your life that are important to take with you as you hit your 30s and 40s and 50s and 60s and 70s, even for aspiring athletes like me in their 60s. It's the same thing.
Well, I appreciate the invite to that symposium at Villanova, because that's how I met Carl and got his number and was able to have him on the show last week. And that interview was very well
Very
received
good.
on so many different levels. So appreciate that, Andrew. I did want to ask you actually about this time of year, because really, from a team standpoint, there's two things going on. You can either get a call about somebody doing something bad, which is not good. And I always thought, Andrew, and I might write about this week for the 33rd team. I saw big changes in guys over this 6-week period. You
Hmm.
know, if everybody is at, let's just say, a level 8 in terms of their conditioning and what kind of shape they're in when they leave in mid-June, some guys would come back, Andrew, a 9 or a 10. Other guys would come back a 7, 6, or 5. You know, there were guys that those last 6 weeks, they went all in, and guys that those last 6 weeks, I don't even know. I mean, we had a guy one time that gained 40 pounds in 6 weeks. It's unbelievable.
It's interesting because you mentioned briefly the calls out of the blue that I would get in this 6-week time frame when you didn't have anything tethering you to the players. And there were some funny stories I've talked about, getting calls from the police and getting calls from unrecognized numbers that make you cringe. That's kind of the cute, funny part of it. But as you mentioned, the fitness part of it is an interesting sidelight, because I think in later years, since when I was working, it's even more exacerbated. You have guys going back to their fitness regimens away from the team. And what I dealt with even back then was they would either suffer an injury doing something that our strength and conditioning would say you shouldn't even be doing. I remember one guy, and I'll keep him anonymous, he was lifting boulders. Like, do you know that training, Ross? He was
Yeah, it's like strongman.
strongman stuff, right? He's an offensive lineman lifting boulders and got hurt. And so I remember just back and forth with this agent, furious. Our strength conditioning guys are telling me to lay into him and threatening, if it turned out it didn't happen, he was unable to play for a long time during the season, we're going to pay him NFI. So that was a contentious one. And then guys doing exactly what I said, where they come back and they talk to our strength conditioning like, no, the past 6 weeks I was doing this. It was really working well. It was this kind of thing. It was this kind of lifting or this kind of running. So these are little things that people don't know, because every player, even if you're making minimum, a lot of these players have their gurus that aren't part of their team when they go back to their college or their hometown or their friend, So this is something that teams deal with more and more. It was in the news with Tom Brady and Alex Guerrero, but on much lower levels, teams deal with this all over right now.
Andrew, let's talk about one of those former players, Aaron Jones. He took a pay cut this offseason at running back, even though he had a really good year. Took a pay cut to stay. And I almost feel like that was the first running back financial domino, right? I mean, none of these teams wanted to give any of these franchise tag guys, Josh Jacobs, Saquon Barkley, they didn't want to give those guys new contracts, new deals. We see even the top free agent, Miles Sanders, got $6.5 million a year. It's rough out there for running backs, Andrew. And I guess the question is, what, if anything, can be done, or is this just the way it is?
Yeah, you mentioned you're working on a piece for writing. I'm doing the same. Sports Illustrated, I'm working on a big piece on the devaluation of running backs. You mentioned a couple anecdotes. Let's just go through it quickly. We have Dalvin Cook, allegedly one of the best running backs in the league, cut, still looking at a tepid marketplace. Ezekiel Elliott was cut, unsigned. Leonard Fournette was cut, unsigned. DeAndre Swift was traded for a ham sandwich. Aaron Jones took a $5 million pay cut, and it looks like he's still got a good deal at $10 million or $11 million. Really good deal. It's just Austin Eckler, he kind of made noise about his contract because he realized what we're talking about. If he doesn't get paid now, when is he going to get paid? And the Chargers were like crickets, threw him a bone with some incentives. So this doesn't happen with other positions. And it really starts in college when you can't come out until 3 years after high school, and it just continues on, where this position, Ross, has a shelf life so much shorter than others. You have the outliers like McCaffrey and Henry, but if you're in your mid-20s, what are you looking at? What are you looking at? And here's the thing I just want to say. Excuse me. It's counterintuitive. Every other position, more production equals greater value, right? Quarterback, offensive line, wide receiver, defensive line, cornerback. The more production, the higher the future value. It seems the opposite with running back. The more production, the lesser the future value because of this phrase, tread on the tire and high usage. We know what's happening with these three franchise tag guys, right? Saquon Barkley, Josh Jacobs, and Tony Pollard. Speaking as a team exec background, they want to get more high usage in 2023. They're paying them a lot of money. But if they're not getting deals now, Ross, they're never getting deals. It's only going to go down no matter how good a year they have. In fact, the better the year they have, the less value they're going to have next year. Think about that. So I don't know the answer. I just know that it's become a fungible position. It's restricted by the draft eligibility rule when normally those guys would be at their highest value. They're just making scholarship and NIL money. And now here we go. By their mid-20s, except for a few outliers, they're reduced. They're cut. They have no market. And it's just kind of sad. There's been some noise about running backs having their own union. I raised this years ago, but that's not going to happen. The CBA is going for another 8 years anyway. So this devaluation just seems stark right now. I don't know more than other years, but it really does seem like a striking development.
One of those guys, J.K. Dobbins, I think he went to minicamp, Andrew, but he didn't participate because he wants a new deal. Chris Jones, the D tackle for the Chiefs, is one of the other guys that didn't go to minicamp. Stephon Diggs missed a day. Correct me if I'm wrong, Andrew, but maybe it's just training camp. Maybe they still have the ability to rescind the fines for minicamp, but I think for the new CBA training camp, like they have to fine. They didn't have a choice because it used to be they would always just rescind it, so it's like it didn't have any teeth to it. I think they have to fine guys now if they miss training camp, right?
I'm sure about that. I'm not sure about minicamp. The CBA may have strengthened rules there where they have to, but we'll see on those guys. You're right about training camp because remember Aaron Donald missed training camp and they gave him a huge deal and they rescinded all the fines. That can't happen anymore. Teams putting the fines aside, I will say this, I've said this to you every year. We don't make much. Teams don't worry too much about guys missing camp early, mini camp. If it's a bigger issue, it gets to training camp with the increased restrictions. That's probably not going to happen. And the franchise tag guys, putting it to them, if Saquon or Josh Jacobs says, I'm not going to show up at training camp, just for all the reasons I just discussed, okay, doesn't seem like a big deal. Like less usage during August. For them to turn down, $800,000 a week in the season, that's not going to happen. I just don't think that. So again, teams are in a leverage position with these players. Like, you want to miss time in the offseason? Okay. We'll have to fine you. We'll do what we have to do. But I think teams always have leverage when the big money starts in September.
Had an epic weekend, Andrew, drinking some Labatt Blue Lights with friends and family. Highly recommend it, especially this time of year. Actually had a bunch of Labatt Blue Light limes that were delicious. Always enjoy responsibly beer. Labatt USA, Buffalo, New York. So, Andrew, one of the things that has come up in sports recently was the partnership between Live and the PGA Tour. And the only reason why I mention it is because I've seen you tweeting about this at Andrew Brandt. And essentially, I don't want to paraphrase you here, but basically, franchise values in the NFL are getting so high that they're going to have to take institutional money at some point because they're running out of guys that have enough money to be able to write the big check, right? I mean, that's even one of the issues why Josh Harris's group hasn't gotten approved yet.
Yeah, Ross, I did a lot on this last week, even on the Business Sports podcast. For people who didn't listen, I really go in depth about the Saudis and the Live Tour PGA Tour merger. So please listen to that if you would. The issue going to American sports in general is, listen, I think what they've done in golf is a toehold. And when I say they, it's Saudi Public Investment Fund. Let's call it PIF, worth $700 billion. I think it's coming to the core four, including the NFL, because what you just said, we're going to run out of multi-billionaires, right? The franchise values have skyrocketed to a point where it's become wieldy even to assemble investor groups at prices going past $6 billion now. 4 years ago, Ross, Carolina Panthers, $2 billion. 1 year ago, Denver Broncos, $4 billion. Now we're over $6 billion with the Commanders. I told this story on my podcast. I'm going to share it here again. I know a guy who's part of a group in Washington, D.C. with a lot of wealth. They were approached by the Josh Harris contingent to talk about a minority investment in the Commanders. And I'm not out of school saying this. He said to me, Andrew, I got this prospectus here. And basically, I'm just asking you as a sports expert, should I be getting more? Because what they're asking for is about $75 to $100 million. And all I really get out of this is good tickets. That's what he said. So what do I get out of this besides good tickets and maybe Super Bowl tickets? I'm like, I don't know. You're not going to be involved in any decision making with the team. But what you get out of it is an exit in 10 years for $12 billion. That's what I said. That's what you're going to get out of it. And your 100 million will be 200 million. So anyway, it's hard. Josh Harris, and as well as anyone, they're trying to sweep Dan Snyder out of there. He's having trouble. He owns the Devils in the NHL. He owns the Sixers in the NBA. He's got comes from Apollo Wealth Management, huge fund. He's worth billions. He's having problems getting a group. That's how much these things cost. So then we spin back to the Saudis. It doesn't have to be the Saudis, but the NBA has opened up institutional money. The NHL has. Major League Baseball has. What that means, Ross, is private equity, hedge fund money can come into these sports, not as majority owner, not as the guy or the woman at the table in the owners' meetings, but as investment. I think it's only a matter of time before owners and Commissioner Goodell allow for institutional money, which may eventually include sovereign wealth funds. So it's not out of the realm that the Saudi Public Investment Fund could have a stake in an NFL team in the next 5 to 10 years. I think NBA will be first. I do. And I think it will extend to other leagues as well, because the money is so high.
Check him out always on his show, where a lot of you are listening right now, The Business of Sports. You can also check him out quite frequently on the Ross Tucker Football Podcast. Really not even as frequently as we used to or as frequently as I would like, just because, man, still some other stuff we can get to. Next time you come on, maybe next month, Andrew, we'll talk about Dalvin Cook and DeAndre Hopkins, that they should wait for an injury or what, even maybe a Carson Wentz conversation. Yeah. Thank you so much for the time. Really appreciate it.
Always great, Ross. Always great to be on your pod and have you on my pod. We'll do it monthly if we can.
Sounds awesome. There he is, Andrew Brandt. You know what else you need to check out? West Shore Home. If you are even thinking about replacing your shower or bath anytime soon, you got to check with the people at West Shore Home first. Had them replace 2 showers upstairs earlier this year. Fantastic. I mean, I just can't believe they tore out our 2 old baths, replaced them with like these beautiful new shower, fresh new bath in a day. In a day. Nobody does anything in a day anymore. It's unreal. My wife and kids thrilled. They feel like they have like a new house just because they have a new bathroom. Think about how much time you spend in there. You can check it out for yourself. westshorehome.com/Ross. And by the way, you get free installation on the new shower or bath replacement right now. So you get a free estimate at westshorehome.com/Ross and free installation. And if you forward the free estimate to me, ross@rosstucker.com, you can get in this best ball fantasy football draft over at DraftKings with me and Joe. Let's do it.
Tuck's Takes.
All right, Ross, we'll start with Ravens running back J.K. Dobbins. He's at minicamp, but he did not practice for contract reasons.
I don't even know what these guys are going to get anymore. I don't know what's going to happen here. The contracts are going the wrong way. I don't even know who they're pointing to anymore. Aaron Jones, Miles Sanders. I mean, I don't picture Dobbins getting more than Miles Sanders, but he's probably right to try to get whatever he can now.
The Saints made several veteran signings. It includes Billy Price, the offensive lineman, running back Lynn Bowden, and wide receiver Kiki Kuti.
So sometimes teams do this right at the end of the offseason program. Other times they do it right before training camp because they don't want to take a chance the guy gets hurt or something happens over the next 6 weeks. But these are positions, wide receiver, running back, O-line, where the Saints deem themselves needing some veteran depth to come in and battle and just have in case of injury or maybe get some more depth on the roster.
The supplemental draft is back. The NFL will hold it on July 11th, and Purdue wide receiver Milton Wright is eligible.
This hasn't happened since 2019. It's been like 4 years and they've had a supplemental draft. Might have to get Dane Brugler on this show or on the College Draft podcast to kind of explain why they actually have the supplemental draft this year after they didn't the last few years. I think it had something to do with COVID and everything with college eligibility.
Well, the reason for Milton is academic. He was ineligible. That is the reason that he is available. And we'll move forward to Patriots. Cornerback Jack Jones was arrested at Logan Airport on multiple weapons charges.
And I'm going to actually make this, Jack, my Labatt Blue take of the week. It's presented by Labatt Blue Light, the pristine Canadian Pilsner. Enjoy your beers together so you can live life to the power of we. Always enjoy responsibly. Beer. Labatt USA, Buffalo, New York. So the Jack Jones arrest at Logan Airport, 2 loaded guns, by the way, it just reinforced what I've had multiple scouts tell me over the years, that if a guy comes into the NFL draft with a red flag, it almost always comes back to haunt him. Jones was arrested in 2018 for commercial burglary at a Panda Express, by the way. He had to leave USC for academic reasons, went to junior college, then he went to Arizona State. Very talented guy. I mean, we've had guys like TJ McCrate come on this show and say, I think Jack Jones was a steal as a 4th-round pick for the Patriots, and he played like it last year. But now you see why he didn't go to the 4th round. Still has an opportunity to have a heck of a career. Just because a red flag rears its ugly head doesn't mean it ruins a guy's career. It just means before the draft, when we talk about a red flag for a guy, there's usually a reason, and it usually comes back to bite him in the butt one way or another once his NFL career begins. Other than that, Jack, I am fired up about the rest this week. We've got Fezzik tomorrow on the Even Money podcast. I mentioned earlier you can check out our conversation on all the AFC North draft picks on today's College Draft podcast. We're rolling along on the Fantasy Feast podcast where I can't wait. We're going to do a live best ball draft. If you go to westshorehome.com/Ross, and we're going to record it. It's going to be like a live show, YouTube and everything. So make sure you go to westshorehome.com/Ross. Should be awesome. I've got a scheduled terrific surprise guest on Wednesday. Other than that, I think we're done here.
Thanks for listening to the Ross Tucker Football Podcast. Make sure to also subscribe to the Fantasy Feast, Even Money, Business of Sports, and College Draft. All available at Apple Podcasts, rosstucker.com, or wherever podcasts can be found.
Had some tweets yesterday with the owner, Al, of Pizza Boy Brewing. Yummy. Sporticulture, humanheadnyc.com, steakhousesports.com, go-bengals.com. Everybody listens to that or watches that or goes to that website needs to listen to today's College Draft podcast. Evergreen Economics, backoffscheduler.com, and still the best gift I'm aware of, really, for any loved one. It's myfrontpagestory.com.